be screwed. Feel my own adrenaline, yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 6th part of What If Issei, Rias Find Harry Potter. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of Gabriel Herrol on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. To come back to Loki, once his punishment was over and he was back to Asgard in his real form, the silver-tongued god kept an eye on his descendants. He had even made contact with the Potters years ago, once James and his friends had become the Marauders when they were attending magical school. It was the wordsmith who procured for them the necessary ingredients to successfully brew the animagus potion and then taught them how to transform at will. After all, he counted their pranks as personal offerings, and after so many, a reward wasn't unexpected. The whole royal family of Asgard had also been attending as guests to Lily Evans and James Potter's wedding. The trickster god was considered a dear family friend, since Harry and his sisters called him Uncle Loki, and were permitted to be familiar with the deity. The god of mischief even made a point to visit from time to time when he was not too busy. Loki had even removed the teachings of Norse magic from Pettigrew's mind once he learned of his treachery. It wouldn't do for the traitorous rat to get smart and use old pagan magic to escape from his just punishment after all. Needless to say, Rias and Aquino had been taken by surprise in learning this. The only thing that kept Rias from reporting to her brother those tidbits of information was the fact that as half-human, Harry wasn't technically part of the Devil faction, even if he was loosely allied to it through her. Thus not really under his brother and the other Satan's rule. A true wild card. After a 15 minutes walk, both beauties arrived at destination. They were about to enter through the front door, but the garage door was open and music was playing from the radio. What brought a smile on both young women's face was the fact that Harry was signing along with the song that was currently playing, while he was under his car, tinkering with something. The Wanderer, from Dion. Oh well, I'm the type of guy who will never settle down. Where pretty girls are, well, you know that I'm around. I kiss 'em and I love 'em 'cause to me they're all the same. I hug 'em and I squeeze 'em, they don't even know my name. They call me the Wanderer. Yeah, the Wanderer. I roam around. Oh well, there's Flo on my left and there's Mary on my right. And Janie is the girl with that I'll be with tonight. And when she asks me which one I love the best, I tear open my shirt, I got Rosie on my chest. 'Cause I'm the Wanderer. Yeah, the Wanderer. I roam around. Oh well, I roam from town to town. I go through life without a care. And I'm as happy as a clown. I with my 2 fists of iron, and I'm going nowhere. I'm the type of guy that likes to roam around. I'm never in one place, I roam from town to town. And when I find myself fallen for some girl, I hop right into that car of mine and ride around the world. Yeah, I'm the Wanderer. Yeah, the Wanderer. I roam around. Oh yeah, I'm the type of guy that likes to roam around. I'm never in one place, I roam from town to town. And when I find myself a fallen for some girl, I hop right into that car of mine and drive around the world. Yeah, 'cause I'm a wanderer. Yeah, a wanderer. I roam around. 'Cause I'm a wanderer. Yeah, a wanderer. I roam around. 'Cause I'm a wanderer. Yeah, a wanderer. While Harry's voice wasn't one that would go far in the showbiz, it wasn't that bad either. Rias was rather bemused, but Aquino said with a teasing voice once the song was over, I hope for your sake that you were simply just singing along with the song Harry Coy, because if you are seeing another girl behind my back, things are about to get very nasty. Both girls suddenly heard the noise of something metallic clattering on the ground, then a dull thud followed immediately by a vocal expression of pain and ended by a plethora of various swear words in English. It seems they had surprised him, and in his surprise, Harry had dropped his tool on the ground and hit his head against the underneath of the car. Rias was the first to start giggling, followed closely by Aquino. The young man was prompt to take back his tool and then roll out from under the car. Once back on his feet, he said with a grumpy tone while massaging his sore forehead with the back of a hand. Yeah, laugh it up you two. See if I let you anywhere near the chocolate ice cream anytime soon for that stunt. Akino, hon, you know I don't frequent any other girls than you, romantically speaking. I told you when we started dating that I'm not the kind of guy to stray. So what's up, my lovelies? Don't you both have usually club matters to attend to once school is over? With that, Harry went towards the toolbox in a corner of the garage to put away the tools left out and then took out a rag hanging nearby to clean his hands from the oil residue. Once his hands were cleaner, he was prompt to drag Akino against him and gave her a quick kiss on the lips and a quicker grope on a butt cheek. The grope made her squeal in surprise though, but she didn't protest. Once done with his girlfriend, he was prompt to hug Rias around her shoulders and give her a friendly smile. The redhead blushed a bit at the hug, but Harry's calloused hands never strayed much to her hidden disappointment. From her upper back like they previously did with Akino. The subject of club matters was a way to talk about their devil activities in the open without outing the supernatural world to every Joe and Jane in the neighborhood. The half-devil was quick to remark how Rias seemed to be unusually nervous for some reason since she usually welcomed friendly marks of affection. And a quick inquiring look to Akino only got him a shake of her head and a mouthed later for answer. The girls headed inside once Harry released the pretty redhead, and while Harry would have greatly enjoyed ogling their rolling hips and shaking backsides, he had the garage door to close and the radio to turn off. Once it was done, he joined the girls inside to the living room, only to find out that Twinkie had offered everyone beverages already. Not seeing the need to change out of his old clothes he kept around for when he was doing mechanics since they weren't that dirty, he sat himself in the lazy boy armchair that was usually in a corner after bringing it closer. Since while the couch was a 3-places model, he felt that with the odd tension in the air, it would be better to not plop himself between both of them. Taking a gulp of the beer Twinkie had given him after opening the can, he asked, "So, what's up? Is someone's going to tell me why Rias is looking like Issei decided to make a shrine out of her underwear drawer and then started a cult to worship her unmentionables? Did he have worshipped them as if they were divinities emerging from the dimensional gap? Has he already started to chant things like All Hail the Holy Underwear out loud yet?" The comments had the desired effect of making both girls erupt into fresh peals of laughter. It was clearly exaggerated since Issei was not that bad, but it was still very funny all the same. Now that the gloom was gone, maybe things would stay lighter. He so disliked it when things were dark and heavy. When they calmed down, Akino only had to elbow her king in the ribs a few times before she finally spilled the beans, so to speak. Needless to say, Harry was totally taken off guard. While he was all for helping Rias find a way out of her contract if it made her that unhappy, it never occurred to Harry that she would ask him to be her husband when he brought the possibility the other day. After taking another big gulp of his beer, he then searched Akino's gaze and asked her with a very serious tone of voice, "Are you really okay with this, darlin'? I'm not getting involved any further into this mess without your accord. I'm far from perfect, I'll the first to tell you that, but I'm not an unfaithful man. I want to hear it from you clearly before we do anything else." Akino shook her head in amazement, which made her long and beautiful black hair fly about. How had she found herself loved by a man like that? She really didn't know. He was far from perfect, even if sometimes she was wondering about it. First of all, he was cussing a lot under his breath when he was upset or irritated. He had also the bad habit of doing things at the last minute if they were not urgent or if he was uninterested in them. Then it was also his childish disposition to pranks. His last stunt had the school's female swimming team dancing the Macarena with the original Spanish song blaring from the school's speaker system in front of the whole school population, in their bathing suits after he lost a bet he had made with Issei. They had bet on the fact that the Red Dragon Emperor wouldn't be able to stop himself from peeping entirely for a whole week and a half. If Rias' pawn lost, he would willingly go back under the dire misfortune curse for a week. But if he won, the Potter Scion would have to make one of Issei's tamer fantasies came true. But her Harry was a good man nonetheless. Rias needed a good man to take care of her too. This was why her answer was, "Yes, I am surprisingly okay with this. If it were anyone else but Rias, I would have never allowed it. But she is my best friend in the entire world, Harry. I just can't let her suffer into the hands of that toe rag. I really don't know what Lord Grimmery was thinking the day he signed his daughter into marriage without her consent. I'm willing to share you, but only with Rias. I don't want any other man or woman into our relationship and eventually into the bed that we will share. Harry didn't say anything else. He only passed a hand into the crow nest that was his hair and absently remarked that they were getting rather long. He would have to go to the barber to get it cut soon. After 1 minute of silence, he said, "Well, I will have a few calls to make if we want to get the ball rolling, so to speak. Rias, do you think yourself able to obtain the signature of one of your parents, or maybe the signature of your older brother? If not, we will need to gather things that belong to the one you want to hoodwink with a spell. I can't use compulsion charms on your parents or brother to help things along this time. I only met your mother that one time, and I never even met your father or your older brother either. Also, you have to take in account that if they aren't willing to help in the first place, the push given by the compulsion won't convince them, so we have to get ready soon. Oh, and before we get to that, will you go on a date with me? I'm not marrying a girl I never dated at least once, even if we keep the divorce option on the table if things don't work out in the end." Rias was completely surprised. The young man had taken everything rather well. She felt somewhat like an outsider in the conversation, to the point of being caught off guard when he talked to her, asking her if she could get on her own either one of her parents' or her older brother's signature. It was probably for the authorization for a civil marriage license in Japan. The fact that he had also a plan B firmly in place ready to go if she couldn't get the required signature easily made the hope to be able to get out of that damned contract came back in full force. Then, he just had to throw her for a loop by asking her out for a date of all things. It was too much. She let out a few snickers, and with a truly beautiful smile illuminating her pretty face, she answered, "Yes, I'll go on a date with you, silly man. For the signatures, I am not sure. My mother seems to be on my side in this whole mess, but can't undo what my father did in the first place. My older brother Serzech wants to help, but as a Satan, he just can't. And after his shaft up with the wards around Kyo Town, I don't want him making the situation even worse while he's trying but ultimately failing to make it easier. We will have to go through the spell you mentioned. It would be poetical justice to put them all in front of a done deal, like my parents did to me in the first place. What kind of objects do you need for the spell casting?" Harry was now on his feet, pacing around the room, his green eyes clouded by his intense thinking and his arms crossed on his torso with his fingers tapping an irregular beat on his arms. They would need to act quickly and formulate the spell right. The Wunch Punch spell casting potion was very powerful, sometimes too powerful even. You had exactly 7 hours to go before the spell you cast became permanent. Once it was permanent, nothing short than a god's intervention could undo it. Not even another permanent spell could undo the previous one. Ria's words then filtered through his brain and he answered, "Great, do you have something in mind for the date, or would you like me to take you out for dinner then dancing? A night of fun in town to dance your problems away after a good meal in a nice restaurant would do you some good, don't you think so? Do you have a favored day in mind, or is this coming Friday evening would work for you? And for the items you would need to procure, it is nothing that would be too hard to obtain or that your father would likely notice the absence of. But I'm warning you, they must have had some contact with him or it won't work, and we will be back at the starting point. You should try to get a tie, a bow tie, a belt. A few hairs would definitely help and other things in the same vein. After all, we want him to give us a signature valid in the human world that we can put on the authorization form and the marriage license and then make him not question at all as to why he did it. We can formulate the spell in a way to also create the documents required and make them slip into his regular paperwork for the school or something similar if needed. The magic of the artifact during the spell casting will provide anything else that is needed for it to work." Both Aquino and Rias were a bit surprised to see that things were forming that quickly. It seemed that Harry had experience with planning on the fly, so to speak. The two different subjects of the conversation in a follow-up were a bit weird and hard to follow though. He was planning Rias and his future date and what was needed for using the spell casting potion at the same time. Aquino decided enough was enough. She got up from the couch and once in her boyfriend's personal space, She made sure to brush her sizable assets against him long enough to distract him, then push him back on his armchair he had recently vacated, before seating herself on his lap. His arms were also quick to entwine themselves around her waist, much to her pleasure. She then said sweetly, "Slow down, dear. You're giving us a sore neck trying to follow your pacing. Let us deal with one subject at a time. First, plan your future date with Rias. Then, when you're done, plan how to go forward and put everything in place to remove the marriage contract's bindings from her, okay?" She finished by giving him a sweet peck on the lips. Needless to say, Harry had been effectively calmed down. Akino had a smirk on her face at that. She loved the effect she had on him. Harry could give back as well as he received since he was very prompt to reverse the roles sometimes, thus leaving her all hot and bothered, the meanie. Rias observed the antics of her friends and smiled. It was good to see Akino truly smile that much, and while the redhead was a newcomer in the relationship, she really hoped that things would work out. The fact that Harry hadn't expected to be chosen but was willing to be her husband to free her was endearing and funny at the same time. That man had absolutely no idea of how many brownie points he was scoring without even trying. Then decided to take a bit the reins, so to speak. She said with a radiant smile that literally illuminated her face, "I'm all for going dining and dancing with you, Harry-kun. This Friday evening will be perfect also. I'll make sure to not have any requests to fulfill for that evening. Now that is decided, when can we cast the spell? I'm frankly amazed that Riser hadn't come by to bother me yet. The original contract stated that I could stay unmarried until I graduated from university or barring that until my 25th birthday. But I received news recently that Riser was growing impatient and was working with the Council of Elders to shorten the delay." On this one, Harry had no idea. Politics always baffled him. It was one of his weaker subjects during his tutoring before enrolling into high school. So he couldn't help Rias understand what was going on between the Council of Elders and her would-be fiancé. Back to Ria's concern, the spell wouldn't be able to be cast until he spoke with his parents, since the twins were not permitted to use the mega magic without adult supervision. After a very near miss, his mother always kept a part of the magical parchment hidden out of the girl's range, and his father had the other part also hidden somewhere. Without the special cauldron and the entire parchment, the mega magic couldn't be activated. And he would also have to bring his parents up to date with everything going on. Even if he didn't really need their permissions anymore in the first place, they deserved to know. There was an interesting bit of complex enchantment involved, but when a witch or wizard became of age, the enchantment made in sort that she or he were automatically considered either as an adult or an emancipated individual anywhere in the non-magical world's bureaucracy. The only variable into the enchantment was to deal with the various age of majority varying from country to country and renewing it at each generation. It was that particular enchantment's work that made Harry able to deal by himself with anything QO Academy's staff would usually send his parents' way. It was effectively also that very same enchantment's work that was keeping Sona and her peerage from making a phone call directly to his parents to report to them his many infractions to the school rules. Rather practical, isn't it? Coming back from his introspection, he then said, "Okay, well, I'll have to talk with my parents first to bring them up to speed. While in their eyes I am an adult who has already left the familial nest, so to speak, they deserve to know that I plan on getting involved in a civil marriage with my girlfriend's best friend with said girlfriend's blessings, and that we will seriously try to establish a triad. I talked to them about Akino on the phone and during my last visit, but that's about it. When they'll be brought up to speed, they should give their permission to my sisters to cast the spell we need. I might have to convince the girls, but usually they are rather easily bribed in my way of thinking when it concerns spells casting." Seeing their curious looks, he then added, "The old magic they are playing with requires two persons to recite the formula out loud in tandem to cast a spell. It's also very tricky since if you take the shortcut to cast faster, the drain on your magical reserves is way more severe than if you took the long way. The girls are notorious troublemakers, and one day, they decided to try the magic without any adult supervision, which is against the rules our parents put in place. They were very lucky that I found them in time to give the artifact the magic it required in payment for the miscasting, or else my sisters would have been either brought in a state of extreme magical exhaustion or maybe even died from overexhaustion. Needless to say, they were punished severely for their idiocy and spanked until their arses were redder than a boiling lobster and throbbing in pain. To rub salt in the wound, so to speak, what was needed to activate the artifact was confiscated from them. Old artifacts like that can be tricky to use, but when you take the necessary precautions and follow the approved procedure, everything tends to go smoothly. That evening, Rias stayed for supper with the couple before going back to the clubroom via Magic Circle since she had paperwork to fill out and a chess game planned beforehand with Sona. But not before being given a satchel full of Harry's magical school books so she could look in what was wizarding magic and selecting the spells she would like to learn. Of course, Harry also had to add her to the wards protecting his flat before she left so she could come back with her Magic Circle if she wanted to. It would have to do until he could swing by the local locksmith shop to have them make a copy of the flat's key for her personal use. Well, make it 2 copies of the key, since Aquino was often over. The sheer idea of having people not keyed in coming in without calling ahead, like Graphia or even her brother were prompt to do, for example, being forcefully redirected far away from their destination to some other random location around the globe, and then forgot where they had wanted to go in the first place, had Rias in stitches of laughter. Apparently, Yuyudo had made the very same mistake recently by not calling ahead beforehand. Harry had given everyone in the Orc his cell phone and home phone numbers just in case they needed to contact him for a reason or another. So Harry hadn't lowered the wards when his sparring partner tried to teleport in. So the Bishonen had appeared in the men's room of a bar where many armed members of different factions were frequenting and where there were often many fusillades, somewhere in a lawless city of Thailand. The city was called Ronapur if his memory was right. Poor Yuyudo, it took him a few hours before he managed to make his way back to his own flat since he was relentlessly pursued by a woman called Ravai Two Hands that he had somehow offended. Needless to say, the knight didn't repeat the same mistake twice. The next day was a school day, but something weird happened and for once, Harry wasn't the source of it. The weirdness came from a serious and rather introspective Issei who asked to talk to Harry in private during lunchtime. Once they were in the deserted maths classroom, and the wizard had it spelled with heavy-duty silencing and privacy charms. He then asked his sort of friend, "All right, Issei. We're alone and nobody can overhear us. What do you need?" The younger boy was clearly uncomfortable, but showing that his level of maturity was getting much better. He then took his courage in both hands and asked, his face a bit red. Do you know where I could take Asia-chan on a romantic dinner date, Harry-san? We had many dates since our little holiday in Tokyo and well, Asia said yesterday after a very intense make-out session that she feels ready for us to make love and would like to do it this weekend. But before that, I really wanted to give her a good time. I don't want to just shove her on the bed, strip her naked, and then bang, take her virginity. Asia-chan deserve much better than that. My dad was no help at all when I asked for his help. He kept crying in a really creepy way that I was becoming a real man, and my mother only said she had 2 rules that we have to obey, and then she didn't want to talk anymore about that subject. That is not doing it in the master bedroom and to always use protection. I can sort of understand where she's coming from with those rules. So, well, you're the only one with experience that I know that wouldn't just brush me off. So I thought I could ask you about it in private. Harry was feeling very flummoxed at this moment. Since when did he become the expert to see for things like that? He never boasted to anyone about his intimate knowledge of the female anatomy. That wasn't his type. Aquino wasn't his first girlfriend. Well, she was his first really serious one, but he wasn't a virgin when they first slept together. Deciding to at least do his part so Asia would have the most pleasant possible time for her loss of innocence, he said. There's an Italian restaurant not too far from the mall. You could always take her there and the price range would be well within your budget. Asia is from Italy, so she might be happy to have a traditional meal from her origin country after so long. Don't forget to compliment her honestly, and not about her assets. Well, not before you are both in the bedroom. If you're not ready yet to go all the way, tell her about it. There's no shame in it. Actual intercourse is a big step to take in any relationship. As for the more intimate part of the evening, I'll caution you to buy yourself a couple packs of condoms. Devils may have low birth rates, but you can never be too careful. You don't want to become a father before graduating high school, do you? Don't forget, Issei, a girl's first time is not easy no matter the species. so you should try your hardest to give her as much pleasure as you can before you deflower her, because tearing her virginity will hurt her. Also try to not finish too soon, will you? I mean, if you can't continue and she's still in the mood for more, you just ruined the whole evening. My personal advice would be to take care of business a few hours before the intimate part of the evening, so at least you'll have some staying power. Don't forget to shower before the date and to put some aftershave. If you smell bad, it will kill the mood so fast it won't even be funny. Also forget the pawn movies you saw. It would set the expectations way too high for a couple of beginners. There's no right technique. Sincerely do what you both feel is right. It will be awkward and messy the first few times, but trust me on this, pal. It will get better with practice. If Asia can heal herself with Twilight healing after you are done, then it will remove the inevitable soreness from her intimate parts that'll come after the act. And the most important thing, do not boast to your friends about your nightly activities. Asia is already shy enough as it is. There's no need to add more oil in the fire. Once Harry was done, Issei was rather pensive. While there was always some sort of friction between the two of them, they both made the effort to keep a cordial relationship. Harry wasn't the type to misguide him for the hell of it, at least not on that subject. Asia was like everyone's little sister, and even the older boy was very fond of the ex-nun-turned-devil. So everything said about how to act in a proper date where he wouldn't be speared by a fallen angel chick and how to treat his partner during their incoming intimacy was valid. After thanking his upperclassmen, they both took off to their respective destination after Harry took down the spells on the classroom. The rest of the week passed normally for everyone. Well, except for Sona, since she was once again on the warpath. The boys of the Orc and Harry had broken again in the student council room to put the merry hell in there as a male bonding activity. Since they had the idea spontaneously at 1 in the morning after being bored out of their skulls, and the girls had refused to do an improvised fashion show by striping into their underwear, the idea of pissing off the Citri heiress was very appealing at the time. They even managed to rope in Gasper by bribing him with 2 cases of fresh blood pops and a brown paper bag with holes for the eyes and nose to hide his face. The agoraphobic transvestite half-vampire was not very happy to be out and about, but Yuyudo assured him that it would be fun and that no one else was there. The pranks were rather juvenile, but funny all the same. They swapped every document from every desk belonging to Sona's peerage with those from another desk at random. Issei even managed to one-up Saji by putting in his things a copy of Matsuda's and Matahama's peeping schedule for the next week, where his female co-workers would see it. The best thing tough was that Harry had somehow managed to con Reed put a compulsion charm on the guy. A random male student to go buy some gay porn magazines, and the guy managed to slip it without getting caught in Sona's desk on his own while still under the compulsion effects. The student council's president was understandingly very livid at the discovery of the magazines and the new break-in, but the boys had been very thorough in cleaning up after themselves. Gasper had used his sacred gear to freeze the surveillance cameras around and inside the student council room so they wouldn't be caught red-handed, and Harry had made sure to not leave any magical traces behind after shutting down the monitoring charms. So the Citri heiress could suspect them all she wanted. She had absolutely no evidence that it was them. And the guys had sworn together a brotherhood oath to not report each other's and to not talk about it with any outsiders, just in case, and to make Sona turn her wrath on somebody else. After warning Issei beforehand to stay very far away from the gym lockers to have a rock-solid alibi. Harry had once again bewitched 2/3 of the perverted trio into stealing her regular clothes while she was in gym class. But this time they had gotten caught red-handed while sniffing her bra. Needless to say, the retribution on both of them was very brutal. It was almost brutal legend. Friday evening was finally there, and Harry just learned where Rias was living. At first he had though that she had her own apartment somewhere in town, or that she was living with Akino somewhere on the Kyo Shrine's grounds, but no, she was actually living on the school campus full-time. He knew already that she had a room off the side of the club room, but he hadn't known that she was living there full-time. But back on the date, he had told her to dress nicely, but with something that she could move freely in it. Harry had put on dark blue jeans, black dress shoes he had borrowed from his father and resized magically, and a dark blue shirt, leaving the last button open and letting the collar unbuttoned. When he met Rias in the parking lot, he was already surprised to see her outside of her school uniform. Seriously, she was wearing it almost exclusively. When she was not parading in her underwear, or less she was in her uniform, except when they were on outings outside the town. Tonight, Rias was wearing a light pink dress with a deep red ribbon as a belt and a deep red scarf tied just below her collarbone, the broader side of the scarf resting on her back, hidden behind the cascade of her long red hair that she had tied at the middle with a white ribbon. The dress was falling just short of her calves. She had also matching socks with flat black shoes that tied in the middle of the foot with a black strip of leather and a golden-colored buckle. In resume, she was totally stunning. Rias was the type of girl whose beauty didn't need any makeup to be flaunted. It was just there. Maybe it was her devil nature. Harry didn't know and also didn't particularly care at the moment. When both were done ogling the other, Harry gave her his crooked smile, and after offering his arm, he said, "You're very beautiful tonight, Rias. Shall we get going?" The young woman blushed prettily, but nodded and took the offered arm. It was proof of her giddiness that she didn't try to garner a reaction from him by pressing her ample chest against his arm. Once at the car, as the example of the perfect gentleman, he opened the passenger door for her and closed it once she was seated. Once seated on the driver's side, he did not turn on the car immediately. He surprised his date by snapping his fingers, and in a small flash of green dragon fire, a velvet rectangular box appeared from seemingly nowhere. It was too big for containing only a ring, so Rias was rather curious. Akino had gotten flowers for her first date. Was Harry keeping the trend to give a gift on the first date? It seemed to be the case, since he then said to her, "I got you a little something. I wish to build a better relationship with you. But you and Akino are two different persons, so I thought about another gift. Here." He finished by opening the box. Inside, resting on a cushion, was a thin silver chain with a small pendant charm made of diamond, her birthstone, in the form of a lightning bolt. Obvious at the awe of receiving what was likely a very expensive gift, he kept going. "I poured into the charm as much defensive magic as I could. While I know that nothing can survive direct contact with your power of destruction, you still take some time to charge it for big attacks, which can be really hazardous in battle. So with that around your neck, you'll be shielded from about anything short of an unforgivable curse." Coming back to herself, Rias had a very hard time to not pounce on the young man and kiss him silly in the parking lot. While she was not usually vain, as a girl she liked beautiful things like that, and it was a very thoughtful gift. So, to resist the temptation to jump him right there, she turned around and lifted her long crimson hair, thus baring her delicious-looking neck, and asked, "Oh, it's so beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much. Would you please put it on for me?" Harry's only answer was a noise of agreement and doing as asked. Once the chain was hanging around her neck, she shivered, and a pool of liquid heat and desire blossomed in her lower abdomen when she heard him speak lowly in her ear. "You have delicious-looking skin, Rias. It's all I can do to keep myself in check and not sneak in a taste." When the chain was locked, the pendant part disappeared inside her dress, fitting snugly between her bosoms. With her sensitivity to arcane energies, she could feel already the warm sensation of Harry's powerful magic around her, like one of his hugs, and it led her to let out a pleased sigh. His power felt so warm, so protective, very caring, and also alluring and extremely powerful. She had often heard how there was a few exceptional individuals for each generation, whom surpassed every limit set by their predecessors. Harry was most likely one of those exceptional people in this generation. Even the oldest beings she met often in the underworld didn't exude the same feelings. Some were more powerful than her future beau, of course, but they had centuries on him to hone their skills. It was to be expected, really. But nobody had made her feel like she was feeling right now. They then fastened their seat belts. Harry started the car and left the parking lot. Rias was observing the passing scenery with attention. For all her knowledge of the human world, it was her first time aboard a simple car. When her family wanted to travel rapidly without magic, they usually took the limousine with a servant acting as the driver, so it was her first time seating on the passenger seat of a regular car. The ride was interesting though. Then after they stopped at a red light, Harry asked her out loud, "Rias, I was wondering about something. Why are you living all alone in the old school building? I mean, I already guessed that you had a budget to respect and everything in exchange of living outside of your parents' house. But Akino has a whole Shinto shrine to herself. There's more than enough room for you two there. I mean, I can understand that Kaneko would like her solitude, what with her aloofness and all, and rooming with Yudo would be rather awkward, considering his sword fetish. I swear that the guy masturbates himself to the picture of a sword with woman's underwear hanging from the pommel. But it seems to me that you only wanted a special place to yourself where you could indulge into your nudist habits. The last bit of phrase was said with a teasing tone and Rias was quick to punch him in the arm. Not too hard since he was currently driving, but hard enough to make her displeasure known. She answered with false indignation. I do not have nudist habits. I just like to shower often, and I always forgot to take fresh clothes with me. I never heard you complain when I prance around naked as you said. Mister, I can feel your intense gaze on my body each time I do that. Potter. Harry bantered back, feeling playful. Have you seen yourself in a mirror recently, Gremory? Rias, you're a total bombshell of a babe. Of course I'm going to ogle you at the first chance I can get. Especially when you walk around naked or only partially dressed. I'm a straight man, so I love what I can see. But you still haven't answered my question. Why are you living all alone when shacking up with a roommate would be more effective, cost-wise? Rias hadn't really an answer for that one. Everyone had wanted a bit of independence once free from her mother's rule, so her family had arranged everything, and she just decided to stay there, since her personal effects were already in the building. Once she explained that to her date, he then offered. I would really like it if you would come rooming with me. I admit that I feel lonely sometimes. As much as I love Akino, she is not ready to let her shrine go, and I really like my flat, so there's an impasse for the moment. So we kind of divide our time between the two places, but we also take a few days off from each other's, to not get on each other's nerves too much and everything. Twinkie only come around for the housework and the cooking of the meals. And in my apartment, at least you would gain a break from school. I don't know how you're still not sick of that place. The campus and the buildings are beautiful, but come Friday afternoon, I'm sick and tired of the place and I just can't wait to leave. Ria's answer was a simple. I'll think about it, no promise though. Harry answered with a shrug of his shoulders, still driving. Fair enough, my offer still stands though. Tell you what, if you prance around naked even more often, I'll even help you pack your things and help you move in. She laughed a bit and answered with a twinkle in her turquoise eyes and a teasing voice. You really like to see me walk around naked, huh? His answer was this. Well, duh. If I wasn't so sure that you and the others girls of the club would castrate me if I even tried, I would have taken naked shots of you months ago for my private collection. Her only answer to this was a rather devilish smirk and a, we will see, in a teasing sing-song voice. She was feeling a bit daring. Maybe if he played his cards right she would give him a private show. Who knows? Soon enough, they arrived at a rather nice restaurant. It was billed in an American style and with the sign in English. Applebee's was the name, and if she wasn't mistaken, it was a chain restaurant whose origins came from somewhere in the United States of America. Well, she never went to one before, and while it was not Japanese, she liked the novelty all the same. They were quickly seated, and all talk of her walking around naked was indefinitely postponed. After all, when you are alone in a car, you can say whatever you wanted, but in a restaurant full of people, it wasn't encouraged even if there was something called common courtesy that incited you to ignore the other patrons unless they were making a scene. Both young adults perused the menu once they were sat in a booth before settling on a pizza big enough for both of them with all dressed for toppings. Rias hadn't much experience with the meal, since it wasn't the sort of things that Graphia allowed the family's chefs to cook, and her excursions into New Lilith and towns controlled by her family hadn't permitted her to really sample the different cooking. When she wasn't trying to ditch her escort, she was being shepherded from one location to another. Waiting for their meals, they kept talking of everything and nothing, the subjects ranging from Harry's unsuccessful attempts to organize a heroic expedition to go vanquish the evil god of algebra Snorts from Ria's new additions in her games collection. By non-verbal agreement, they kept away from sensitive topics, like their plan to slip the leash tethered on her and why his family is so close to the Norse pantheon. The discussion stopped when the waitress assigned to their table brought the pizza like she had done beforehand with their drinks. Once they were served, they both thanked her, and once more alone, they dug in. Well, Harry did. Rias clapped her hands together and said in Japanese, Itadakamasu. before she started digging in at her turn in her meal. Harry raised an eyebrow at that, before shrugging and deciding it was unimportant. Once they ate their fill, the young man asked her, "Do you want some dessert, or would you rather that we take a little digestive walk before we go dancing?" The redhead thought it over for a few seconds, then opted for the walk. Once done, they left and Harry paid for their meals over Ria's protests since she had already started to dig in her handbag for her wallet. He silenced her by saying, "I was the one who asked you for a date. It is thus my responsibility to pay. It's not like we ate at a very luxurious restaurant. I have more than enough money to pay for it. Let yourself be pampered a bit." Once done, they did walk around a bit in a comfortable silence, his arm locked around hers, admiring the nocturnal sights. Things were rather peaceful around here. The damages Sir Setch's faulty casted wards had done to the local human population were now only a bad memory since it was totally reversed. Wanting to know more about the fallout of the incident, if only by sheer curiosity, he asked, "Hey Rias, I was wondering if you had any news about your brother. I mean, your mom didn't look very happy at his botched job on the wards, and I was kind of hoping that she would have torn him a new one. Seriously, I keep expecting the man to barge in with guns blazing, with how his personality seems to be when you are concerned." It didn't take long for the redhead to smirk in a rather devilish manner and to answer after a small laugh, "Oh, it gets better. Sir Setch had effectively learned how to tune out our mother years ago, but she is very devious and thus decided to tell Milikas what happened. Milikas happened to be Nyai-sama's son, my nephew and her grandson. As a good boy, the kid was very prompt to tell all about it to his mother. My brother is formidable, but his wife terrifies him when she turns her ire on him. He is currently in the doghouse, as the saying goes. Needless to say, he will work to take his magic back up to snuff, but with all his duties and obligations to his title, people and family, he's thus quite busy, so he shouldn't bother us for quite some time." They both shared a laugh at that. Harry had nothing personal against the man. If they had met earlier, he would have effectively called him on his poor casting, but he was not the type of guy to rub salt on a wound. The man was already on his mother, younger sister and wife's shit lists. In Harry's mind, that was quite enough. No need to make him more miserable than he surely already was. They kept walking a bit, and then Harry shared what news he had from other corners of the supernatural world. Or more precisely what a certain fanged pain in the ass he knew was doing. "You're kidding," Rias exclaimed herself, trying but failing to not laugh out loud at what her date just told her. "I kid you not, Rias. The wizard Marshall found a way to infiltrate heaven, and now he is trolling the angels since many if not most have a stick up their asses. The guy somehow combined wizarding magic, magecraft and one of the 5 true magics to find his way past the heavenly gates to start his new campaign of terror. He was about to just give up his solo tentative and ask help from Asgard in borrowing the Bifrost when he made the discovery on how to get there. I swear I could hear his cackles and the angels' cries of horror from all the way down here. I'm willing to bet that Michael is currently banging his head on a hard surface since the old man of the jewels is a veritable cockroach, about as immortal as one and extremely hard to get rid of." They laughed for a while, and after calming themselves, they decided it was time to head back to the car so they could get to the main event of the date, which was the dancing. Harry did take them to the same club he had taken Aquino, but it was the best place in town. Rias had the same reaction that her queen had in seeing the bouncer. It was like seeing the human version of Cyborg Bale or his long-lost twin, since it was quite warmer than when he had taken Aquino on their first date. Neither had worn a vest, so they bypassed the cloakroom entirely once they were admitted inside. Once seated at a table and with non-alcoholic drinks in hand, he was the designed driver after all. They took in the ambience. For Rias, it was very new, since her heiress status had her frequenting mostly elite and/or luxurious places in the underworld. So frequenting middle classes establishments had for effect of making her feel like any other girl. Usually a girl likes that a man wooing her make her feel special, but in Ria's case, the fact of treating her like a regular person was making her feel special. It was quite the irony, no? Harry did take Rias for a spin on multiple songs on the dance floor, but her favorite one was the one titled as Footloose. I've been working so hard. I'm punching my card. 8 hours for what? Oh, tell me what I got. I get this feeling. Time's just holding me down. I'll hit the ceiling. Or else I'll tear up this town. Tonight I gotta cut loose, footloose. Kick off your Sunday shoes. Please, Louise, pull me off of my knees. Jack, get back, come on before we crack. Lose your blues, everybody cut footloose. You're playing so cool. Obeying every rule. Deep way down in your heart. You're burning yearning for somebody to tell you that life ain't passing you by. I'm trying to tell you. It will if you don't even try. You'll get by if you'd only cut loose, footloose. Kick off the Sunday shoes. Ooh wee Marie, shake it for me. Whoa, Milo, come on, let's go. Lose your blues, everybody cut footloose. Ooh, oh. We've got to turn you around. And put your feet on the ground. Now take a hold of your soul. I'm turning it loose. Footloose, kick off the Sunday shoes. Please, Louise, pull me off of my knees. Jack, get back, come on before we crack. Lose your blues, everybody cut footloose. Kick off the Sunday shoes. Please, Louise, pull me off of my knees. Jack, get back, come on before we crack. Lose your blues, everybody cut, everybody cut. Everybody cut footloose. While no one between them really knew the right steps, they had great fun. At one time, Harry even made her spin on a 360 degrees. After such an eventful song, she felt the need to refresh herself somewhat, and if she did not splash some cold water on her face quickly, she might do things that she would regret later on. After excusing herself, Rias made her way to the ladies' room, and when she saw herself in the mirror, she immediately recognized the signs of her budding arousal. She was flushed. The liquid heat she felt in her abdomen was making her work overtime to not rub her thighs together, and there was no deceiving herself. She was effectively hot and bothered. The Gremory heiress was quick to splash some cold water on her face, and in a way reminiscing of Aquino, she said to herself, "Calm yourself, Ria's girlfriend. You do not sleep with a man on the first date. You have better control than this. Yes, he's hot. Yes, he's very interested. The subtle looks in your cleavage when he thinks you're not paying attention are proof enough. But no, he doesn't want an easy girl. Stupid hormones. Think about anything else but that." But what? His last prank on Sona and her peerage. Oh, by the mouse, it was hilarious. I had to bite the interior of my cheek to not explode with laughter. Planting gay pawn magazines in her desk while playing merry hell with all the documents filed in there. Then redirecting her rage on the two-thirds of the perverted trio by making them the perfect scapegoats. It was priceless. After slapping a bit her cheeks and another wave of cold water, Rias felt in better control of herself. She returned to the main room and was greeted by the smiling visage of her date. While he was not a pretty boy type like Kiba, Harry was handsome in a more roguish manner with a bit of aristocratic air on him, what with his high cheekbones. She thought that she had reasserted control of herself, but the pool of liquid fire returned into her belly with a vengeance when he murmured near her ear with his crooked smile firmly in place. "So, did you manage to calm yourself a bit, my beautiful? You looked like you were either about to faint or to jump me in front of everybody, with all the blood rushing to your face." He chuckled a bit at seeing her so easily flustered. He had great fun in teasing her. As if he was not experimented enough to know when a woman was all hot and bothered. Please. Time sure flies when you're having fun. Soon it was time to go since it was closing time or very near it, since the barmaid just sounded the last call from her counter. Rias and Harry both decided that it was time to leave. Once outside they headed for Harry's car, his arm warped around her waist in a possessive manner that made her feel a bit giddy and her head was resting on his shoulder. She nearly busted a gut right there when she saw him glare venomously at a passerby for daring to wolf whistle at her. Oh, he was a tad possessive, heh? Maybe a trait he had inherited from his sacred gear. He did tell them a while ago that he was the wielder of a strong draconic one. Soon they were inside the car and on the streets, in the direction of Kuo Academy. Well, it was the original plan, until they were met by a police roadblock. They were instructed by a policeman to enter a file of multiple cars. They only had to wait for a few minutes before an officer knocked gently on the driver's side door window. Harry was quick to lower the window and inquired politely to the policeman. "Yes? Is there something wrong, officer?" His only answer was a strict, polite and no nonsense. "Driver license and car registration, please." Harry, not in the mood to get stuck with a traffic ticket and demerit points on his license and in his records, obeyed quickly, and 1 minute later, the required documents were in the policeman's hands, carefully inspected with the bright light of his flashlight. Once satisfied, he was given back his papers and asked, "Did you consume any alcoholic beverages or drugs before taking the wheel, sir?" The answer was "No, officer. We're both totally clean. My friend here doesn't have a driver license, so we both stuck to soft drinks only all evening since I'm the designated driver." Once again, the policeman stared at the younger man a long time, likely to see if signs of drunkenness and/or impairment were visible. But Harry had told the unvarnished truth. They were both totally clean. It seemed that the officer was debating putting him through the breathalyzer, but the young man had been polite, cooperative, and hadn't exhibited any visible negative signs. Sure enough, they were guided towards the exit of the roadblock once the policeman had sent the okay by his walkie-talkie to those manning the other side. A few minutes later, they were back in the tranquil streets in direction of the academy. Rias was the first to break the silence by saying, "It's the first time I get held back by a police roadblock. It's a novel experience for sure. I saw the signs around town for the anti-drunk driving campaign going on, but I never thought they would really do things like that here." Harry shrugged and answered, "It's not my first time being stopped like that. There's a certain suspicion on young drivers since many of those caught driving while intoxicated are teens to young adults. In fact, it's the 4th time I'm stopped like that, but each time's went smoothly since I take great care to not have alcohol in my system if I have to drive. I could get by. I mean, even if I'm not a full devil, my organism filter things like that real quick. But since we have to keep the charade that we're humans, it's better to not take any chance." Rias nodded at that, well versed into her role as one of the 2 great ladies of QO Academy. Soon enough, they were arrived at destination. Harry joked that he wanted to drive her to her door, but one flat look from her turquoise eyes made him desist. He insisted on walking her to the old building's front door though. Once there, she didn't give him any time to sweet-talk her into something or whatever. She took him by surprise by pushing him against the closest wall by her deceptive strength and then kissed him senseless. It was as much to get it out of her system as it was a reward for giving her such a good time. Harry wasn't inactive for long though. Quickly he reversed the roles, pressing her against the wall, claiming her lips and mouth once more. After a few more French kisses, he obtained a loud aroused moan of pleasure from her when he began to nip sensually at her neck. So, she was very sensitive there. Good to know. Things were looking like they were about to go much further, but after a quick grope of her butt, Harry seemed to regain control of himself and pulled back, panting from the lust and the lack of air after such a frenzied kissing session. He then said with a rough and scratchy voice more to himself than anybody else, "Enough. We have to stop. But you're so fucking gorgeous though. Damn, I want more." "More? No, not on the first date. Just a little bit more? No. Too risky. No. Later. Yes. Later." Rias had put a big smile on her bruised lips during his speech. She had managed to make him loopy. She felt so damn proud of herself right now, knowing that if she pushed further that he would likely snap and she would let him just take her right there against the door, and while it would be very pleasurable on the moment, they would both regret it the next day. She made very sure to not entice him further. No, it was better stop there and fan the flames of desire for later when their relationship wouldn't just be pure physical allurement. So after a quick, "Thank you for the date, I had so much fun. Let's do it again sometime. Good night." She retreated quickly inside, leaving a still bothered and somewhat loopy Harry to clear his cobwebs outside. Way too bothered to drive back home safely, he decided to cheat. Once back in the parking lot, he cast a stasis charm on his car before shrinking it to the size of a toy. Too scatterbrained to try to apparate without risks of splinching, and not in the mood for a portkey either, he then said the 4 magic words. "Vanishing Dragon Balance Breaker." Albion's answer was set on a chirpy tone, and let me tell you, it sounded very weird in a dragon's voice. Divine Dividing Scale Male. Once the transformation was complete, the now armored warrior took to the sky, totally obvious of the figure watching everything from the deeper shadows. 2 violet eyes tracked the sacred gear user's form, flying away at good speed, that just used what he recognized as wizarding magic on a simple car of all things and called upon the balance breaker mode of his sacred gear if only for a lift home. The man scratched his black goatee and said to himself, "That's the White Dragon Emperor? Well, the kid got a good taste in girls though. The Gremory chit is a real looker. He could find something better for a car though." He couldn't believe his luck sometimes. He was just taking a stroll since he couldn't sleep. What with nightmares and bad memories mixing together, and lo and behold, he stumbled upon two teens kissing rather heatedly and then leaving after managing to not rut each other's where everyone could see them. So Sursech's little sister was seeing a wizard hat. That development would be interesting to keep an eye on. Knowing that nothing else was bound to happen around here, the man just slunk back from where he came from. He would likely find himself something to do in town. Harry arrived at his home a few minutes after leaving the parking lot of the academy. The scale mail started to undo itself piece by piece during the landing. The wings were the last thing to go, vanishing as soon as he was safely on the ground. With a few waves of his ringed hand and a now better concentration, he brought down the wards around his flat and entered through the garage, where he put down the miniaturized car on its spot and took down the spells he had put on it, letting it take back its original shape. Locking the doors of the car and the garage door, he let himself in the flat through the side door. He then put the wards back up and started undressing himself while moving as he progressed further inside, letting his clothing fall to the ground, not bothering to pick them up. Twinkie would likely take care of them way before he awoke tomorrow. Once he was only left in his boxers, he entered his bedroom and was about to just let himself fall on the bed when he saw the shape of his girlfriend, sleeping soundly on her side of the bed. With more delicacy than usual, he slipped inside the covers, and as soon as she felt his presence, she snuggled on his side without waking. Harry was quick to hug her against him. He so loved feeling her naked body snuggled against his. He even put a soft kiss on her forehead, before answering Morpheus' call to fall into his realm. Tonight had been a good night. A few days later, Rias, Aquino and Harry were at the latter's parents' house in Kyoto during a free afternoon. James had flippantly given his accord to Harry's plan, proud that his son was scoring 2 hot babes at once. That particular answer earned him a look from his wife that meant he would be in for a very unpleasant and quite long dry spell if he didn't shut up. Wisely, James did shut up, but pouted at the teens snickering. Sirius wasn't here though. He had to go back to Britain as Lord Black since a few of his family members he didn't outright hate and hated him in return had asked for an audience. Remus was there though, but he was smart enough to keep quiet. Azalea and Leilani were quite taken by the differences between Rias and Aquino. What with the former looking like someone coming from Northern Europe and the latter like a more voluptuous Japanese woman. After Rias made her sales pitch, so to speak, explaining her situation in detail, Lily did give her accord. She wanted them for supper sometime next week though, to properly grill them and to embarrass her big boy. Not that she told him that though. With the formalities out of the way, Azalea and Leilani were all excited to be permitted to cast a spell on somebody else than the usual nuisances in Yasaka's court once in a while. James and Lily did give them back their parts of the magic parchment, and everybody then adjourned to the basement. It was looking like a regular potion lab, but in a protected corner sat a piano and a multitude of various musical instruments. When asked why they were there by Rias, Lily answered, "It's for the ambience and the motivation, dear. Casting a spell with the Wunsch Punch is one of our family activities. So while the girls play the witches of old, we give them good background music to help them make the spell casting more memorable. Hold yourself ready. When it will be time for you to put the ingredients in the potion, you will have to put all the objects you have collected quickly in the cauldron, then take a few steps back to not interfere with the spell casting." Rias nodded and stayed nearer the cauldron while everyone else went near the walls, except Lily, who took place on the piano bench. She started to do some warm-ups, and then when she was ready, she nodded to her daughters and said, "Let's go, my darlings. It's time for a little mega magic." The younger girls worked together like a well-oiled machine, filling the cauldron with water while making sure to not spill anything, then starting a flame under said cauldron with a small ball of fire shooting from Leilani's hand. The twins' powers had evolved recently. Azalea had the stronger aerokinesis between the two of them, while Leilani had the stronger pyrokinesis. with a nod to their mother, who then started to play a catching little ditty, and the rest of the instruments waking up and starting to play themselves. It was time to start. In their left hand, they held their parts of the parchment and said together in an perfect duo with a big prankster grin on their pretty faces, "Time for a little mega magic." At that phrase, the fire burning at the base of the cauldron grew hotter, and the water in the cauldron approached instantly the point of ebullition. With the next phrase, the water turned from clear to a sickly green color and smoke started to billow out of the cauldron. Harm and pest, disaster and curse, the one-punch magic will make it worse. By then, the girls had started walking around the cauldron in a circle, and then they took back the incantation. By the power hale and healthy of an earthquake on a roll, prove these parts be part and party are one and only scroll. Formula of deepest night, if it's you then shows your might. Join what was torn asunder by the power of flames and thunder. As they kept chanting, the smoke escaping the cauldron had noticeably thickened, to the point of being no longer transparent. Then their next act confused both Aquino and Rias. They threw their parts of the parchment into the smoke column, but instead of falling into the mixture, it floated in the air, staying into the column of smoke where they had been thrown. It was a magic that defied both Rias and Aquino's combined mystical knowledge. Ready, set, one-punch. The two parts of the parchment still defied the laws of gravity, and were then taken along the column of smoke higher in the air, before bright green bolts of magical electricity appeared from the rips and fused the two parts into one once more with the sound of a very loud thunderclap. Even weirder, the parchment went horizontal while still in the air and started to rotate at very high speed in a clockwise direction. Then the smoke started coalescing around the rotating parchment, creating a cloud, and from the said cloud, with another loud thunderclap, a bright ray of sickly green light traveled into the brew, turning it into a shade darker. Having received the signal, Rias stepped forward with her small box containing her father's personal effects, and at the instruction of the twins, she put everything in the cauldron, except the box. Once done, she was asked to get back, and the younger girls came back with 2 long white stirrer rods, but before starting to stir, they said together in one voice, "O potent bowl of omnipotent potion, now hear our wish and grant us a solution." While still stirring, they started to formulate the spell they wished to cast. Rias could see the items she had put into the brew started to dissolve, and soon, they were no longer visible, even with her enhanced eyesight. Confuse Lord Zeoticus Gremory into giving his full signature, and to make it valid and binding into the human world. Make in sort that he doesn't question what he signed for 24 hours. Once the delay over, make him come back to normal without any memories and doubts about freeing Rias Gremory from her marriage contract. The spell couldn't be clearer than that. Once Ria's father gave his signature, it was child play to copy and paste it on all the required documents with regular magic. 24 hours was more than enough to get an appointment at the closest courthouse. Now it was time to finish the spell. Now we say it in reverse to make our curse a whole lot worse. Contract marriage her from Gremory Rias, freeing about doubts and memories any without normal to back come him make, over delay the once. Hours 420 for sign, he what question doesn't he that sort in make. World human the into binding, and valid it make to and signature full his giving into Gremory Zeoticus Lord confuse. As the formula was spoken in reverse, the parchment stopped spinning into a clockwise direction, only to start back into the counter-clockwise direction at the same high speed than before. The smoke was now billowing back into the cauldron, making it boiling even more with even larger bubbles. When the last of the smoke trail was inside the cauldron, the potion exploded violently into many bolts and arcs of sickly green lightning. Exiting the potion's lab at incredible speed at the same time, the very catchy ditty lily and the enchanted instruments were playing ended. What timing! Harry's paramours then understood why such magic was dangerous by observing the state of his younger sisters. Before the spell was cast, Leilani and Azalea were full of energy, almost like squirrels on coffee. Now they were panting hard and had some difficulty staying upright. It was Harry who said, "If they are that tired after a spell, it means that the recipient of it is very far away. The mega magic must be traveling the various dimensions right now and will hit at any moment. We have now 7 hours to go before the spell becomes permanent. Since it's a one-hit spell, we don't have to cancel it, but we usually do it anyway to remove any traces in case of an investigation." To validate Harry's claim, An old cuckoo clock appeared out of nowhere, hanging on the near left wall, the needles turning very quickly for about 1 minute to only stop both on the number 7 and for the wooden cuckoo to cry 7 times before falling silent. Once done, Harry told them. It's your turn now, Rias. You should get a move on. You are on the clock now. You have now 7 hours to go back to your house in the underworld, get your dad's signature, and then come back. Here's the documents to make him sign. Good luck. He finished with a peck on her lips. With Sona's help on the sly, they had forged a few convincing permission slips for a fake school trip. Rias only had to make her father sign it and then come back. Once she would be back, they could transfer the signature on the real and necessary documents already gathered. With a quick application of her magic circle, after obtaining permission to teleport from the potions lab, Rias was gone and Aquino followed her. These two were always together during Rias' visits in the underworld. Not having the black-haired young woman following her would raise too much questions that she was not in measure to answer. Back in the underworld, Lord Zeoticus Gremory was suddenly hit by a few green bolts of lightning after entering his office. It did no damage other than a mild shock, only leaving him a bit confused. But he brushed it away as unimportant, since there was no one with him and the lightning had disappeared without traces. Maybe it was Milica's trying his hands at prank spells. He had much work to do. So the red-headed man sat himself on his comfy chair behind his desk and got to work after chasing those bothering thoughts away. Rias was now on the clock. She had to do her part in casting off the chains of the marriage contract holding her. Would she be successful in all her endeavors, or would she fail? The bets were now on. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 7. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Gabriel Herrol on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.